What is going on YouTube? I just wanted to preface this video with a great conversation with Sachin. We had a long conversation about Rocket Lab, Palantir. I think we even get Sofi in there at some point. So I just wanted to preface that. I wanted to thank him. We recorded this in March of 2024, so it was a couple months old at this point. But a lot of the topics are still extremely relevant, and I just wanted to get a good shout out to him. Follow him on X if you guys don't. I'll leave the link in the description below. And let's just hop right into it. It's a phenomenal couple-hour conversation that I'm going to chop up into a few bits. So I really hope you guys appreciate it. Sachin's a wealth of knowledge. Be sure, if you don't also, to follow him on LinkedIn and some of the topics that he posts on there. It's extremely insightful, and the guy really knows what he's talking about when it comes to investing. So Sachin, once again, much appreciated, my guy, and I really hope to have you again on the channel. Cheers. All right. I am happy to be here with Sachin Vats. He has multiple channels. He does a lot of things on LinkedIn as well. But as many of you guys probably know him from Palantir Weekly and his connections with Amit and many others in the community, I'm here and happy to chat with him. I've talked with him a little bit about oil and gas in the past as well. But the reason why we're here talking today with Sachin, and I'll let him introduce himself in just a moment, is he has a very unique perspective that I think many people that invest specifically in Rocket Lab do not have. And I'll let him kind of introduce himself and maybe talk a little bit about what his perspective is on the space industry and what got him kind of started. And I'm sure he may have probably way more knowledge about it than I do, because Sachin always does his due diligence. So very curious to hear his perspectives, which is why I wanted to get him on screen. And once and again, thank you so much, Sachin, for taking the time. I know I blew you off once or twice, so the fact that you gave me some grace and let me meet with you after accidentally just sleeping through many times I was supposed to meet up with you, I appreciate that. But really happy to have the discussion.
Hey, Matt, thanks for the invitation. It's my pleasure to have a discussion with you. I mean, despite everything that we do on Faintweight and social, I think you are the only person who belongs to oil and gas industry, especially the subsurface part, as from where I started my career. So I think there's a different bond. I think apart from that, I think I only know Aisha, who covers oil and gas. I think rest everyone I know in Faintweight is very non-oil and gas kind of a person or non-energy. So I think it's always a pleasure to talk to you about that, and happy to share. I mean, why don't you lead some questions and we start discussion, and I'll bring my perspective on it.
For
Just
sure.
before we start, that couple of things. I mean, I do not have a position in Rocket Lab. It's a company I follow closely because I have investment in SpaceX, so I am very keen what is happening. I have also reviewed data rooms of few space companies. Okay, I follow closely what is happening in Astra. I led a data room once for a company called Relativity Space. So I think this is a sector which is, and there are other companies. There are a few companies coming in India as well. So it's a sector I just keep a tab, and especially so I'll be happy to share whatever little I know.
Very good. All right. Well, I was under the impression, based off of how highly you talked about Rocket Lab and educated so many people on X and things of the like, that you actually had a position. But I know in the past you've divulged that you have a position in SpaceX. But I've learned more even by just sitting here and chatting with you, that you've led data rooms, which, for people that aren't necessarily familiar, data rooms is basically the opportunity for different parties to interact and be able to observe whether or not they want to, say, invest capital or merge or acquire. I deal with that somewhat on an oil and gas basis, but it's really interesting to hear, and I'd love to get any sort of information that you can to share about your experience in some of those data rooms in the space industry. I think us as well that are on the call would love to hear about it as well. But I'm very curious. Obviously, not many people obviously have the opportunity to invest in something like a SpaceX. I think everybody would be is willing and waiting for it to go public. You obviously have the accredited investor tag next to your name to have that opportunity to invest in it privately. One, I guess, at what point did you have the opportunity to invest in SpaceX? And then two, I think the thing that everyone's kind of curious about is, who do you think is the bright star within Rocket Lab? Obviously, if you, or not within Rocket Lab, within the rocket industry, space systems industry, and everything that you've kind of observed so far. So we can dive into many things, but I guess first and foremost, let's talk about a little bit about SpaceX and how you got involved.
Sure. So I invested in SpaceX as early as in 2020. Okay, when they were having a round which is 36 billion, started in February 2020. This is before the Dragon launch happened, and the Starlink was just like a footnote, was just initially discussed, and everybody was kind of making joke of that. I was focused on investing in SpaceX since 2018, 2019, but I was not able to get in. As soon as I became a credit investor, I think I started looking it for aggressively. Everybody I was meeting, and eventually, thanks to some of my colleagues in my alma mater in SIAD, connected me with a PE company in Switzerland, and yeah, I think I was able to negotiate with them to take a position in SpaceX. So this is how it happened. The bigger question is why I invested in SpaceX. Okay. So in 2018, 2019, SpaceX was already a $10 billion company. And the challenge which a lot of people in Rocket Lab also faces is how to even value a company in space, like space economy, and what the future of a space economy look like. Okay. So that particular time I had a certain opinion, and the opinion was that government funded space research has become unaffordable, especially primarily what is happening in Eurozone and what is happening in US in NASA. Okay, and there was always this question that will a private space industry be even allowed to exist? Okay, so SpaceX, what they have done and their trajectory at least gave some early indication that private space industry can exist and it can do things in a much efficient way. Okay, so that was the indication where the space economy is going. Okay, being in India, India also has a very refined space mission driven by the Indian government, ISRO. So you also keep a close watch on that. Okay, so you also see like what are the different customers are coming, what are the different kind of satellites that are going in, and there was also an uptick in the activity that happens in China as well. Okay, so there was like indication that okay, if you can drop the price of launch, there the activity could go in a very inelastic and a non-linear way. There were like several evidence that existed. Okay, so that gave me an idea that space economy in terms of business is actually going to increase. Then there has always been this discussion on space tourism, which has existed as long as space industry existed. There has been some very rare instances, but different companies have tried different way. I mean, Blue Origin has tried this pit stop kind of a, you go and you touch the Kármán line and then you come back. uh, we know what Virgin has tried. You go there, spend few seconds, and people were spending money. And so that gave me some idea that there is certain appetite, at least for the higher echelon of society, to spend money on space tourism. So there was like enough evidence for me to conclude that there is a scope of private space industry in general. Now, people have to understand here that uh, this is not writing codes. You need really hardcore engineering, material science, propulsion science. Okay, there are a lot of things are needed. It's not like somebody, four people can get in their garage and write Facebook. No, it's not like that. Okay, so there is a higher entry barriers, and at that particular time I realized that SpaceX, and I mean, given what was happening in Tesla, uh, we had a fair idea, at least I had a fair belief that uh, at some point of time all the euphoria of Tesla will turn into SpaceX. At that particular time the question comes, when the valuation was 10 billion, that could SpaceX be $1 trillion company, and if that to happen, how will that happen? So during my research, and I did like it over 18 months, I started reading like first instance of something like Starlink, and everybody knows about what is the Starship idea. To me, Starship at that particular time was still far-fetched, more a cash guzzler. I was more focused where the cash is about to go. So I knew about that Dragon program. I read about the issues that Starliner is facing in terms of Boeing. Okay, so I had a fair confidence that probably the Dragon will succeed over Starliner in near term, and that will create a lot of value because, I mean, NASA is paying tons of money to Russia, which is, I mean, at this particular point, and even at that particular point was a kind of a strategic adversary. So they won't mind paying to SpaceX that kind of money, and if SpaceX is doing, then SpaceX will do other things as well. Okay, SpaceX vision was also very simple in terms of reusability, something that everybody has tried for years. Nobody has managed to done it at cost as efficiently as they have done. So they were able to reach or push frontiers where no one has gone before. They were also able to do it with their heavy rockets. Okay, and to be fair, people don't know this, that launching a heavy rocket is actually few times more complex than launching a light version of the rocket. Okay, the kind of complexity that comes with it, and they managed to get even boosters to come back. So that was something. In India, we have a saying when it comes for heavy rocket. Heavy rocket is like a wild elephant. You can tame it, but it's not guaranteed every time. Okay, so that was quite impressive. So I had indications that space economy is going to be a thing. I had indications that I mean, yeah, SpaceX is building kind of a different kind of a frontier push. I had indications from the success in Tesla that there is a lot of positive sentiment that comes around it. I was also looking other companies. I mean, people don't know that. I mean, now Paul Allen is dead, who was the co-founder of Microsoft, Bill Gates. But Paul Allen also spent a lot of money in building this stratosphere kind of a plane. Okay, which flew few times, but nothing happened. And then people might not know that there have been several companies have tried several things. I mean, we know that when Blue Origin started, Blue Origin, I mean, in terms of money and in terms of the, if you call, the excellence during the dot com, I think Jeff Bezos was slightly ahead of Elon Musk during those days. His execution of Amazon in dot com was better than what Elon did with Zip and PayPal in general. That's my view. I mean, he built something and he grew into something far bigger those days. And a person like him building a rocket science company, who has access to some of the world's best robotics, I mean, he can raise money. And given what he has achieved with Blue Horizon in last that year, was also saying that, yeah, it's not about writing codes or it's not about lobbying. It's something delivering fucking really hard. And Elon was succeeding on it. So that was my view, that okay, there is chance, or there is very clear evidence of space economy, there is very clear evidence of excellence, and there is very clear evidence of that this is a kind of like a winner takes most market. Okay, and since he was integrated in terms of defense with NASA, with DoD, with Pentagon, yeah, I think you start building barriers of entry. So that was my initial. The challenge will always is like, how do you value? Okay, it is going to happen. Like today, Nvidia is going so high. I mean, everybody knows Nvidia will sell probably 20 times more what they are selling today in next 20 years. But how to value? And that's the big challenge came. And until that point, I haven't made that kind of big investment. I just became an accredited investor. So there were several restrictions that I had. I mean, it was a really sizable chunk of my money. Okay, so I thought, okay, how I'm going to do it. So then when I started reading about Starlink business, I came up with a very simple valuation model. I mean, it's on my Twitter account as well in my highlights. I said, okay, let's me discount everything that is happening in launch business. Okay, I say to my valuation of launch business is $0. Okay, let's say they do Starlink. Okay, now Starlink business case to me was very simple. It is to provide internet where none exist. So I did my research to understand what the ISP market look like. I realized that 50% of people just don't have any ISP. Okay, I have been on vessels, seismic vessels. I have been on offshore. You know what is the quality of internet there, and how important it is. So, and how expensive it is. So I knew that particular case. So I did a market estimation on that part, and then I started looking where internet actually exists, which is like 60% of earth, if you would like to say. 10% is bare minimum, and remaining 50%, there is actually 20 to 30% is in low density area where their their quality is pretty bad. So if you see, as of today, only 20 to 35% of earth actually has good quality of internet. Okay, now if you want to scale it with a traditional method, it's just not possible. The kind of infrastructure and optical cable system, so yeah, it's not going to happen that way, and there is no business case for that. Okay, then you look, so it is building solving problem from a very different point of view. Then if you have cases like we talk people on offshore, if there is a crisis, there is an, like we have seen Starlink, how it comes. So I build up this view very early that it is going to succeed where traditional services are not succeeding. So it was kind of a very blue ocean model kind of a scenario for me. So I looked at the market and I say, okay, what does the market look like for the ISP globally? Different studies and different ways we do it came between 639 billion to a trillion per year. Okay, and that is for serving 50 to 60% of market, and out of which half is barely served or poorly served. Okay, so I said, okay, at least that portion, people need internet, but they are not getting good internet. Okay, so that is somewhere between 200 to 400 billion market. If you increase the value of service there, and if you improve the quality, you can capture some portion of that. Okay, that at that particular time, now you start building some hypothesis and assumption, and then there is a market where no internet exists. Probably you can capture some portion of that. I mean, people have been trying to expand internet. You remember Facebook and Google tried this flying balloons and blah blah blah, whatever they did. So there is a lot of philanthropy money that is okay to go for it. Fine. Then there is offshore trains, planes, and all that. I mean, everybody has used internet on plane. Everybody knows it sucks. Everybody knows it's too expensive. And in my studies, that market, or TAM, if you call it, that came around 36 billion. So I said, okay, there is somewhere between 700 to billion to 1 trillion of existing market, and 30 to 40% of that is poorly served. Then there is a market that doesn't exist, and if somebody will fund that money, probably that market could also grow somewhere 200 to 300 billion. And then there is this 36 billion. So I came up to a view that even if I put all these things together, SpaceX has a decent chance to actually capture 50 to 100 billion of this market. Okay, now
Specifically
that was
Starlink,
the
no launch.
specifically Starlink. Okay, because it's a very, I'm not saying space business is $0. I said for my, see, when you want to invest, you want to build an asymmetric position. Okay, so for my purpose, I said, okay, I'm not looking into that. I'm looking into Starlink. Okay, and then I said, okay, this is 50 to 100 billion. Okay, and then what happens? Like every time you launch a satellite, it improves the functionality and performance of whole grid. Okay, if you want to move from Australia to New Zealand, it's a matter of regulatory approval. Okay, you cannot do that in traditional ISP. So it's a true blue ocean kind of a business where there is no competition existing. There is literally no competition. Okay, if you are on a ground zero somewhere in where tsunami has a struck or earthquake has a struck and there is no utilities, there is no other solution that can work like that. Because if you have used internet with a geostationary orbit satellite, yeah, I mean it's like going back to 1980s.
Yeah, spotty.
Okay, so it was a problem that was solved from a very smart point of view. Okay, and given like what was happening in geopolitical arena, I think it was also becoming very clear that it will get. So I came up with an idea. Okay, that's we talking like 50 to 100 billion. Okay, now 50 to 100 billion of revenue on a product that could have a margin of 60 to 80%. Traditional ISP doesn't have that. So I said, okay, now I'm talking something that can have, I mean, anywhere free cash flow on that business going from 30 billion even to 60 billion.
Yep.
And we are not even talking about ride sharing and space tourism or dragon launch and everything else that SpaceX does. Okay, and it is in a economy. I said, okay, if this happens, then what will do? Will things stop there? No, things will not stop there. I mean, once an economy opens, things happen. Okay, this is what we can see, that this is the horizon for us to see. So I said, okay, something that has 30 billion of free cash flow, okay, the market will definitely expand, or 16. What does the multiple you apply to that? So I came up, I think you can apply anywhere between 10 to 20 the multiple on that.
That's fair.
Okay, so I said that puts company between somewhere between 300 billion to 1.2 trillion. So that, to me, that became that, okay, this is how this company could be a $1 trillion company. Okay, then the round came at 36 billion. Okay, so okay, I said, okay, this is a kind of a round which company, yeah, that could have a 10x kind of an opportunity. Okay, so yeah, I mean, first you build on the view of the market that is emerging, then you view that what the valuation, does the valuation make sense to you in some way, is there an upside? Okay, and then the most important part is, and this is where 90% investors fail, you actually have to pull the trigger, and you actually have to transfer the money, and you actually have to sit on the investment for years. And I think this is where most investors, yeah, they do not have the courage. People have thesis, people have knowledge, people just don't have the courage. That's the reality. Okay.
Especially with the illiquidity of an investment like that as well.
Yeah. So putting those things together, and then like Starlink initially started, then Starship things started, then the Artemis program came in, and yeah, I mean, then the Dragon started. Okay, now we also have learned that that the Pentagon is using SpaceX to develop some very specific defense satellite. So then suddenly, like, this thing started happening, and like I said, because I built my thesis from a very conservative point of view, everything of this was an upside. And SpaceX is the only company in public and private market that hasn't seen dip during COVID, after COVID, and during the downturn of growth tech and everything. This is the only company. Most of the companies were able to hold it, but this like kept growing. And during this time, it went from 36 to 180 billion. It is not yet ready to go public. Now it's an Elon Musk company. So you can imagine, like, when his spin-offs for Starlink, and Starlink will spin off because Starlink has achieved the objective. And at the end of the day, Starlink objective is very simple: to create free cash flow for rest of the SpaceX. So my idea was very simple. When I looked at SpaceX, I said, I'm buying this internet provider company, which will provide internet to the world where none exist or poor internet exists, and space business is an optionality. So how you frame the problem in your mind in investment is very important. Okay, so that I say, okay, I said, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, so that's my view. And of course, like, being in this, I look closely what Rocket Lab has done, what Astra has done, what Relativity Space has done, and what everyone, like, in terms of government is doing. Okay, so I started building over the time. You meet people, sometimes you meet people from different companies also. You read reports. Okay, and this is how, I mean, Rocket Lab is something which I have very deep respect. I mean, I'm very open to take position at some point if certain milestones are met. Okay, and I'll detail on that part as well. But yeah, I mean, to me, that was, we always talk about what's the next thing. If you want to find what the next thing, you also have to build in your head what are the future version of Earth will look like, or what the future version of world will look like. And if that version has to exist, what are the milestone has to happen in between, and what is the nearest milestone that can help you validate that this is the right direction to look in. So this is how my space investment journey started. It's not like fintech, it's not like growth SaaS or something like that, uh, because you are really in an uncharted territory, and you really need a very high quality engineering excellence and project delivery excellence to achieve it, which a lot of people, like I said, the example of Blue Horizon, I mean, they have massive money, they have massive partnership with existing space industry, they have excellent leader like Jeff Bezos. You couldn't have asked anyone better than him, like, if you're looking to build something new. And yet, yeah, I mean, if you see, they have not even delivered as much Rocket Lab has delivered. Rocket Lab have an actually rocket that actually goes to and deliver payload in space, while they just have a rocket which can go and barely touch the Kármán line. Oh yeah, it can come back. That's a different story. And yeah, I mean, their New Glenn is always like this. So I mean, the joke I have about New Glenn rocket, it's like string theory. Everybody loves it. Nobody is able to prove that it even exists at this point.
Yep.
So yeah,
and it's always going to be unveiled in the next 6 months. It's always going to be, yeah.